G'day, I'm DaveTTC and this is Dave's Cave. Well, welcome along to this episode. Today, what I'm going to do is take a step backwards. I started off some of this laser stuff, the laser journey, from the point of view of people who were at least intermediate. So let's just go back to the beginning, or at least early. Today's episode is going to be an introduction to lasers, to CNC. And as always, I'll just ask you, please like, subscribe, and watch to the end. Who knows what you might miss out if you drop out early. So today, we're not going to be on Lightburn. We're just going to have a walk around or a look around a laser and just get to know the various parts and what the different things do. So let's come over here. Now this laser here is a Lasermatic. It's a Mark 1. They've come out with even better improvements since then. This one is without the enclosure. I don't know if they do one without an enclosure anymore or if they just only do with an enclosure, but with an enclosure, as you'll see in my other videos, my other Lasermatic, with an enclosure is by far the preferred option. But this one's good because it gives us easy access and we can have a look at what we've got. So most lasers are going to have some kind of frame. And the idea is this is your laser module, which will shoot out a laser beam which can be used to engrave and or cut. It's limited by the amount of power it has and the type of laser it is. So this is a blue diode laser, and they can't really do much with steel. This one here, yeah, it can make a mark on stainless steel. You've got to go into the software, change a few settings, but that's for another video. What we have is a CNC, computer numeric control, a CNC controlled device where the computer talks to the machine and sends something called G code. You don't need to know G code, you don't need to know CNC. There's a couple of different programs out there. There's a free one, Gerbil, GBRL, or you can pay for a licensed version, which I use, is Lightburn. By far, definitely superior. I started off with a free version, a free download, not of Lightburn, but just the Gerbil one. And it was usable. By no means would I say it's not usable, but it's just not the same as using Lightburn. Once you go to Lightburn, if this is going to become a significant hobby or more, I think you're going to want to have Lightburn. Anyway, across the top is our gantry. We have what is called an X, a Y, and possibly a Z axis. In G code, in CNC, you generally have at least 3 axes. A lot of lasers don't have an automated Z axis. The Z axis is up and down. And this is an important setting so that you get the right burn or engraving. And what I'm going to do is label a few parts so that you can keep them in mind. So the gantry will move up and down along the Y-axis. We already mentioned the Z-axis, so I'll pop that one on now. The Z is our up and down. This is our Y-axis. And that just leaves us one other major axis, which is our X. Now any CAD type of program, any program that you use on the computer or G-code, is going to have at least your two axes of a graph. Your X across the bottom, your Y running up the screen. If this helps you to be able to remember what's what, don't be afraid to put some labels on your laser so that you can remember, because if you're new to this, chances are you're going to need help. You're going to want help. You'll get on a forum, you'll join a Facebook group, something like that, and you'll be posting and saying, this is happening, that is happening, I don't know what to do. And people say, oh, your X-axis this, or your Y-axis, or your gantry, your laser module, which is this one here. These are different things that when you're brand new, you might not be able to remember what's what or know what people are talking about. So they're your fundamentals. Now we have obviously movement in order to be able to do the said task. That happens through some kind of drive mechanism. It could be a screw, a lead screw, which is just like a big long thread, and each of your parts will be attached to some sort of nut on that lead screw. It may be a chain, or it may be a belt. One of the most common methods appears to be belt drive, which is what this is. And then to drive the belt, you need what is called a stepper motor. So let's just have a look here. This here is a stepper motor, and you might be able to make out that this is turning over here. You might be able to see inside there's a belt, and it's got ribs or teeth on it. And there's another one on the other side, so it drives it uniformly up and down. Up inside the gantry, there's another one, another belt, and you'll see a stepper motor here. So people will talk about stepper motors. Now there's two other essentials. Obviously, you're going to have a power supply, which will probably look very similar to anything that you'd use for a laptop, a computer, or something like that. And that's an Australian plug because I'm down under. And you have your plug that goes into the side of the machine. Well, in my case, the side of the machine, depending on your machine, where it might go. Now you're going to have a data cable. It'll be some kind of USB cable or something of the like, which is going to plug from your device to your computer, unless you're connected via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or some other option. But if you've got a solid connection, if you're using a physical connection, then you will have some kind of lead. And this one's got one of those little deflunkies on it, can't think what it's called, to stop some of the electrical interference that you might get. They're the two basics that you're going to have to be able to get your machine up and running. Oh, I say have to. Yes, you might not have the data cable if you're connecting through an app, wirelessly, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And something else you might have is here we have an air hose. And so this air hose comes down through to the laser. Now, if you've ever tried to light a fire and you've got embers going, or maybe you've got coals and you're trying to get the fire going again, you know that if you fan it, if you get a bit of wind going, that it might burst back up into flames. It helps, oxygen helps things burn better. So in a similar way with your laser, depending on what you're doing, you may want to have what they call air assist, which is going to help it to burn better. And so in this instance here, I've just got a little air compressor, which is just continuously pumping air through to do that. This one has an inline switch, off on, and I can turn it on. Some lasers have them built in. Some lasers do the switching for you. The new model of this, I believe, will have automatic switching, which is controlled through Lightburn. So this is something that I would recommend. The other thing is if you've got air going through and blowing through the nozzle, it's going to help prevent smoke going up into the laser and getting on the lens. If you wear glasses, you can imagine what smoke or greasy fingers might do to your glasses. Well, in a similar way, your lens on your laser, if it gets caked up with soot, smoke, debris, it's not going to work as well. That gives you some of the basics about your machine here if you decide to go down this path. Something else you might get is a roller. And as the name suggests, you put something on there and you can laser something round. So I have a plug here. Here is the plug. I haven't used this one yet. That'll plug in there. And the other end will plug in. I've got a motherboard just behind this C channel. It will plug in there. I'll spin this around so you can see it. Now in this case it's just underneath. Maybe I'll lift that up a bit higher. You might be able to make out that plug just there. So my cable would go in there and then the other end would go into my roller. And then with your roller you want to have a fixed position so that you can always reference to the same point. That's something I've covered a little bit in a video that is down below, and we'll possibly go into it again more later. This roller, you're able to adjust the size. Undo the screws, slide it across to wherever you want it. There's spring-loaded screws, push them down, screw it back in place. And then you need to change the position of your laser according to the center of wherever those rollers are. So in this case, it would be about there. But in this case, it would be about there. And so our laser needs to line up with that. This laser, it has the wiring for a Z-axis, which is what that cable is. And so in this case, the Z goes into here, and instead of adjusting up and down, adjust the roller. In some cases, what you'll do is you'll position your gantry over above it. You'll unplug the Y axis so that it can no longer move back and forth, and plug that into your roller. Or a chuck, which is a little bit similar. I'm not sure if it's in range or not, but the lathe behind me, that would have sometimes a chuck on that end to be able to grip things for wood turning. And so the chuck accessory is essentially a small lathe, which will go in here. If you've got champagne glass or something like that, you might have this set up a little bit higher to take the stem, and then the main glass on the larger roller there. Spin this back around. Now it's recommended in most cases that if you do move your machine by hand, that you don't do it too quickly. If you watch my power switch here, I'll pull this back. Did you see that light up? So when these move, a motor takes electricity to make it go round. But if you make the motor go round, it can also produce electricity. And so when you move your gantry, you're putting a charge backwards through the system. And rather be safe than sorry, you don't want a charge to go through and do something it shouldn't do. So therefore, be gentle when you are moving it by hand. And I would recommend not trying to move it when it's powered up and switched on, because then you're going to be fighting against the steppers that are holding it in place. With your lasers, in most cases, you're going to have some kind of power switch. Then on the side of this one, I have the power supply and where I plug in for the data cable. On the back of this one, I've got the air hose, which comes along up into the gantry across. Now you will note that there's enough cable or enough hose so that when that goes across, it's just so. I haven't got a big loop of it where it's going to fall down and possibly get tangled. This laser has cable management systems. So there's got these cable trays here, cable chains, which roll out flat, loop up and drag change is the word, I believe. And so the cable stays in that. And there's one underneath to handle the cables for the laser head. Sometimes you don't have cable trays. Sometimes you don't have a drag chain. Sometimes you just have the cable that comes across the top or wherever. And so in that instance, when you would normally have some fixing points, whether it's screw down like this or zip ties or something, just recommend that when it comes to this end, you make sure you don't have too big a loop. You want enough to get to your extreme, but not so much that it's going to fall down and possibly get trapped or caught somewhere. Similarly, you want to make sure that when you go to the other end, that it's not so short that it pulls a kink and pulls tight. So this one here is, how you say, just right. I'll just move that back across. That's something you might like to do for yourself with your own laser, is put some labels on, particularly the X and the Y. If you find that you keep forgetting which one's which, just get yourself a bit of masking tape, put it on there, and you'll be able to remember. That takes you through the basics. If there's anything you'd like me to dive into with greater detail, please just say so. Once again, I invite you, please, just take that time, drop down below, give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye for now.